Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Injury Law Pod. I am your host, Eric Bartlett, 29-year personal injury lawyer, and this is the podcast where we talk about all things personal injury law related. And up today, we're going to look back to 2025 and what was going on with juries and jury verdicts for that year. So every new year, we get a report from the prior year of all the jury verdicts that occurred in the Kansas City metro area. So this includes the counties of Jackson, Clay, Platte, Cass, on the Kansas side, Wyandotte, Johnson, and I may be missing one, but I don't think so. But we get an overview of every verdict that was rendered as far as what type of case it was and, what happened, how many verdicts there were for the people making claims, how many verdicts there were for the people that are defending claims, how much was provided by the jury, things like that. And every year, throughout the year, I get questions as a personal injury trial lawyer about, are juries still awarding big verdicts? What are juries doing with these types of cases? Things of that nature. And so today we're going to take a little snapshot of 2025, and we're going to see exactly what the trends are and what it's looking like here in the metro. So, what are the big headlines coming out of 25? There were fewer trials, there were fewer plaintiff wins. Again, a plaintiff is the person making the claim, and there were much lower total verdict dollars given by juries. If somebody asks you, what are juries doing? Now you have some general idea. So why does all this matter? So every week I get a report of all this information that's compiled at the end. Every week I get the report. We subscribe to the service. So we know how juries are handling cases on a week by week basis. And so if we're not in court trying a case, then we know what's going on and how we can work to value these cases. But this is so critical. You have to know what juries are doing so that when it comes time for us to handle our client's case, we have some foundation, we have some basis for guiding our clients on how we should proceed with their case. And trust me, insurance companies, they have all this same information. And so together, we're trying to figure out what the fair settlement value is if it's not going to go to a jury trial. So let's take a look at what the big picture is. Again, fewer trials, smaller verdicts. That's the simple overview. So in 2025, there were 70 civil jury trials. Now remember, this is just on the civil side. We're not talking about criminal jury trials. We're looking at civil jury trials. So this number is down just slightly from 74 in 2024, and it's down sharply from 100 civil jury trials in 2023. So why is that? 2023 was basically the first post-COVID year. During the COVID pandemic, essentially courts for the most part were shut down as far as jury trials were concerned. There were some outliers. There were some special circumstances where the court would maybe hold a jury trial outside the courtroom where people could spread out more, things like that. But for the most part, jury trials really stopped happening during the COVID pandemic. So it's no surprise that in 2023, when everything got back on track, there were a lot more trials happening. And then it's coming back down, probably to more of a normal level after that COVID experience. So, as far as total dollar amounts awarded in 2025, there were total verdict amounts of $62.5 million. Now, interestingly enough, that was significantly down from 2024. In 2024, the total verdict amounts in this area were 276 million. And in 2023, the total verdict amounts were $2 billion plus. So you can see there's been a pretty dramatic drop off last year in total money awarded over all the cases. The average plaintiff verdict in 2025 was $1.1 million. Now compare that to 2024, the average verdict was 5.1 million. And in 2023, it was $20 million. So again, significant drop off. And again, probably largely due to the pattern settling back down. Now, again, in reality, this is not because injuries disappeared. We have to keep that in mind. People are still getting injured, things are still happening, but it is a combination of fewer cases going to trial, defense-friendly case selection. And what do I mean by that? That means the insurance companies are forcing us to try our more difficult cases. Obviously, they're paying fairly. Once a lawyer's in, once we have fought the fight, so to speak, they're getting those claims paid. But if there's difficulties with a case, they're forcing those to go to trial. And lo and behold, those are more difficult. Those are not producing the results like all the settlements are. The other big factor was there were monster verdicts, we'll call them, missing in 2025. So one thing that can skew those averages is that some particular case ended up with a very large verdict, which then completely skews the overall average. And in 2025, there just weren't those types of verdicts happening. Now let's talk about where these verdicts are actually happening. First and foremost, you have to understand venue matters. And venue means the location where the lawsuit is going to be filed. And we've long known that there's a Missouri versus Kansas reality check, if you will. Jackson County, Missouri is a very plaintiff-friendly location. And for whatever reason, juries down there are more likely to provide higher compensation to somebody that's been hurt. In Jackson County in 2025, there was a 51% plaintiff win rate. Now keep that in mind. So that's almost the toss of a coin when a case goes through a full jury trial. It's about a toss of a coin as to whether you're going to win or not. People are always like, there's runaway juries, they're crazy, they're just giving out money. That's not the case. It's only 50% of the time that a plaintiff actually wins. And then you have to look at, again, the dollar amounts. Jackson County had 11 of the $13 million verdicts. It's still, like I said, the most plaintiff-friendly venue in the metro area. Now, let's compare that to Johnson County, Kansas, which is interesting because Johnson County, Kansas has notoriously been known as a very conservative venue. People that live in Johnson County and serve on juries very well may have thoughts about giving money to an injured person. They may be thinking about things, honestly, that they're not supposed to be thinking about. Will my insurance rates go up? Is this going to increase the cost of things of that nature? But whatever it is, it's been, again, notoriously a very conservative place. Now, interestingly enough, in 2025, it had a higher plaintiff win rate. It was 59% in Johnson County. So 59% of the time, a plaintiff would win their case in Johnson County. Still, it's about the toss of a coin, just a little bit more, but interestingly enough, more than Jackson County. However, the average verdict in Johnson County was around $821,000. So clearly much less than the $2.2 million in Jackson County. So again, a little bit of a higher win rate, but lower dollars provided overall. So again, some things to keep in mind between Missouri and Kansas that can also play into these numbers. Missouri is a pure comparative fault state, meaning regardless of how much fault is on the person making the claim, they can still So again, if they're 90% at fault for something and the person they're suing is found 10% at fault, they can still get a verdict in their favor. Now, their damages that the jury provides them is going to be cut by 90% by the judge. But still, when we're just talking about the ability to get a verdict in your favor, that comparative fault is important. And the other part about Missouri is that juries decide punitive damages. Okay, so keep that in mind, because now when we look at Kansas, they have modified comparative fault. And what that means is if the person making the claim is over 50% at fault, if they're found over 50% at fault, then they cannot get a verdict in their favor. So that matters. And then the other part is judges award punitive damages later in this. So again, that can affect things. It's taken out of the jury's hands, it's put in a judge's hands. So all these things can go factor in to how a case is going to resolve between these two venues. So same injury can have very different outcome depending on the side of the state line it happens. Venue selection can change a case's value by 7 figures. So again, interestingly enough, it really matters where somebody is hurt. Now let's narrow this down to what most listeners care about, what you very well may be dealing with, which is a car accident cases. That is usually the highest number of cases that are tried before a jury each year. So let's talk about that a little bit. So in 2025, in all of the metro, in rear end collisions, the average verdict was $353,000. In uninsured or underinsured motorist cases, so again, cases that now the person is suing their insurance company directly coming out of an accident, the average verdict was $356,000. Where there was a right-of-way violation, somebody failed to yield, something like that, the average verdict was $125,000. And there were no wrongful death auto accident cases tried to a jury in 2025. So why does all of this matter? Jury skepticism is real in low impact cases and soft tissue only cases. So what do I mean by that? Again, if there's not a lot of property damage to the vehicles involved, or if the injury is centered around, again, what we call soft tissue, right? The muscles, the ligaments, the tendons of the body. There's not an x-ray showing a broken bone. There's not a massive amount of really invasive treatment, maybe no surgery, things like that. Juries, they don't go crazy with those types of cases. They look at those and they figure out what they think is fair for having to go through some amount of time of pain and maybe some physical therapy, some medication, things like that. But again, those do not yield high dollar verdicts. Now, also of interest is that uninsured and underinsured motorist claims, they perform better in the jury verdict results when medical records are clean, meaning there's not a history of prior problems, there's no major gaps in treatment, things like that, right? It's not real complicated. And future damages are well documented. Is this person going to need future treatment? Are they going to miss time from work in the future? Did they get knocked out of a job opportunity, a higher paying career, something like that? Affects those uninsured and underinsured claims. It also affects other ones as well, but this is from the data that we're seeing out of 2025. So, practical advice here. Today's jury lean into clear liability, how the accident happened. Was it clearly the person you're making the claim against? Was it their fault? Is it very clear? Objective injuries. Again, are there x-rays? Is there surgery? Are there cleared medical diagnoses from doctors? Things of that nature. And again, shockingly, honest plaintiffs. Is the person that's coming before that jury, are they credible? Are they likable? Does the jury believe this person was really hurt and really deserves to be compensated? So where are juries still willing to pay big money? Well, let's take a look. So the $1 million verdicts that happened, again, there were 13 verdicts over $1 million. Now that's down from 31 in 2023, just to keep that in mind. But most of those larger verdicts were tied to medical malpractice, slip and falls with severe injury, and business or commercial negligence. Again, juries are more likely to look at a business or some commercial operation and feel like they, at least what it appears, they're more comfortable holding them responsible and providing higher compensation to the person that was hurt. Now, of interest on the medical malpractice front, again, medical malpractice usually has a very low win rate, but when they do win, they have pretty significant verdicts, because usually the ones that are going to trial have either a death involved or some really significant permanent injury that's going to be a lifelong factor for the person. And so the average wrongful death medical malpractice verdict in 2025 was $5.7 million. And the average standard medical malpractice verdict in 2025 was $3.86 million. Our lesson here, our takeaway, is that catastrophic injury cases still win. When people are seriously, permanently hurt, those cases, they resonate with juries and they can still bring a verdict in their favor and a higher value. Now, again, volume personal injury cases struggle at trial. And when I say volume, what we're talking about is a lot of these smaller car accidents, or maybe even a fall that has a lower injury connected to it, something like that. But this is the key. Insurance companies, they know all of this. I know it, they know it, and they price their settlements accordingly. And that's really important to keep in mind, because this changes our settlement strategy. And so let's talk about how this information that is given to us changes that. So in 2025, defense strategy would appear to be fewer trials, because insurers are less afraid of juries, more take it or leave it offers. Hey, this is it. Otherwise, take us to court. We'll let a jury tell us. And more forced mediations. So mediation, it's a very useful tool. It's an opportunity to try and resolve the claim with a mediator. If the circumstances are such that on our side of things, we're not very confident that we're going to get a really good result for our client in a jury trial, a mediation makes a lot of sense. And the insurance companies know that. And it doesn't mean we're giving away anything, but we're facing reality. And, what I always tell my clients is my job is to get you the most money I can reasonably get. I'd love to just be able to get people the most money I can get, but there are a lot of factors that go into guiding somebody into what a fair settlement is. The statement is always made that a fair settlement is one in which neither side is happy. The insurance company thinks they're paying too much, and the injured person thinks they're not being paid enough. And that's the definition of a fair settlement. So, other things, what is really important for me as a plaintiff lawyer? It's to be trial ready, because putting everything together from the beginning creates value. It shows the insurance company we're serious about the claim. We're ready to prove it up. We're ready to show a jury how badly this person was injured and how it has affected them in every aspect of their life and how it's going to affect them in the future. So, starting that early is very important. And again, case framing is greater than case volume. And by that, I mean making sure you are putting each case together with its own unique set of circumstances is much better than treating every case the same. That's not a win-win scenario. And every case deserves to have it fully worked up, ready to go. And again, that's going to yield a higher result. Early expert involvement pays off as well. If it's a situation where we know there are some hurdles, it's important to get the appropriate expert witnesses involved early on to address those hurdles. Because again, the sooner you show those cards to the insurance company, the sooner they are placing the proper value on the claim itself. It's always harder to turn that insurance ship around because it's a slow moving machine. But if you can get them in the right direction from the beginning, you're going to be a lot better off. And that's why we're always working these cases up from the beginning as if we're going to be in front of a jury. And what does that end up doing? Yielding better results for our clients. Now, here's the hard truth of everything. Not every case should go to trial for many different reasons. A lot of these cases they present real risk if they get in front of a jury. And not every low offer is bad faith. Sometimes the evidence dictates what the offer is. Our job is to maximize that offer to get our clients as much as we reasonably can. And data, not emotions, should drive decisions. And this is a really big deal because when you're hurt and you're going through all of this, there's no way that you cannot be emotionally invested in your situation. And that's why a seasoned personal injury trial lawyer is critical to have in your corner to, number one, fight on one end, number two, counsel you on the other, because you have to understand what the realities are. And if you just go off of emotion, you may walk away with absolutely nothing. So it's really important. Now let's bring this home to Kansas City injury victims, somebody like you that might be listening to this. Jury verdicts are absolutely still possible, but they're harder earned. You've got to document everything. I talk about this all the time. I just finished a 3-part series, and one of the key things was medical treatment, making sure you're getting it, making sure you're telling the medical providers everything that is hurting you, that's going on with you. You're not having gaps in treatment. And if they're referring you to specialists, you're going. If you're supposed to be going to physical therapy, you're going. So critical. Wage loss, again, documenting that and putting it together when the time is right. And the impact on your life. And we always ask our clients, number one, keep a journal for us, how this is affecting you. And when this is all done, we want that information because that's the non-economic part. And a lot of times the non-economic part of an injury claim vastly exceeds the medical bills and the lost wages. That's the real human impact of an injury. And right now, another takeaway is the lawyer you choose matters more than ever. Because again, if you go with high volume TV advertisers, whatever that looks like, you may not get the appropriate workup on your case that you should. You have to vet the lawyers that you are potentially going to have represent you. Again, I always go back to Google reviews, see what real clients are saying about the way they were treated, the way their case was handled. That's just critical. It's critical. There's not a lot of resources. Maybe somebody sent you to that lawyer, and that's a good start. But you can always look at what all the people are saying, what these lawyers know, what their experience level is. Is this what they do? Do they know from day one how to work that case up? If somebody sends you to the lawyer that they used for a divorce or for a traffic ticket, that may be a problem because that lawyer, they don't regularly do personal injury and they may sit on a case and they may not get the appropriate evidence, all the stuff that you need to solidify your case down the road. So keep that in mind. The other big thing to take away, and again, there's no real way to control this, right? Where you get injured. But again, Missouri versus Kansas, the fault rules differ, damage calculations differ. Your case strategy has to change based on the location. And again, the lawyer that you've got representing you for your personal injury claim has to understand those differences and has to understand what it's going to take to get the best result for you where you are. As I always say, early legal advice. Reach out to a lawyer. It is in your best interest. It can preserve venue options. It can avoid comparative fault traps. It can avoid medical blunders. It can avoid lost evidence, and it can maximize a recovery, period. Allstate Insurance Company did a study, and they found that people with a personal injury lawyer got 3 times more than without. Enough said. So where does this leave us heading into 2026? Possible predictions are still fewer jury trials overall. Again, a lot of mediations are happening, getting cases resolved before they ever get in front of a jury. Again, there's going to be higher standards for trial-worthy cases. Again, the personal injury lawyer has to be doing a really good job of working these cases up. There's going to be continued insurance defense pressure on mid-range cases. So if it's not a catastrophic injury, if it's not a life-altering injury, those insurance companies are going to fight very hard to minimize those claims. There will probably continue to be strong verdicts coming in for catastrophic injury, clear liability situations, and well-prepared plaintiffs. Put the case together well, and the result will go well for you. Here in Kansas City, Jackson County remains key. Johnson County continues conservative damages. And federal court, by the way, didn't talk about that. Federal court is very defense leaning. And it's also a procedural nightmare. So if you can avoid federal court on a claim, do so at all costs. That's how I'll leave that. Jury verdicts aren't gone, but they are concentrated, and data favors preparation, honesty, and strategy. If you're injured, I cannot stress enough, the right guidance early matters more than ever. It doesn't cost you anything. Call a lawyer. We're always happy to guide you through what your situation is and how we think we can help you. If you've been injured in Missouri or Kansas, again, talk to a lawyer who understands this data that I just talked about, not just TV slogans. I know it looks good when it's prepared for mass consumption, but you gotta know if you're in the right hands. And again, one great way is Google reviews. If you want to look back to last year's recap of 2024's verdicts and see how those were breaking down, you can go here to this video, and that's where I discuss 2024's data. And otherwise, as always, be safe, be well, share with someone dealing with an injury claim. If you're watching this or hearing it and you know somebody, make sure you let them know what you know. And until the next episode, take care.